The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we are about to take you higher. Broadcasting from the Rocky Mountains of Colorado to you listening around the world. This is Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa Nicole Thomas. You can follow Tessa on our Facebook page at Spaced Out Radio, on Twitter at TessaTNT, and you can subscribe to her YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for the archive. We break on command 'cause women rule the world. Buckle up, space travelers. Let the countdown begin.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's time to go for a ride with host Tessa Nicole Thomas.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening, Spaced Out Radio. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain hike, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 419.9 in colorful Colorado. It is Saturday, August 4th, Sunday, August 5th for those of you on the East Coast and beyond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a rockin' week, an awesome day, and an even better evening. I am your host, Tessa TNT, and I am live tonight broadcasting from beautiful Fylth, Colorado. We are 150,000 strong nightly on Spaced Out Radio Network, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, as well as Deep Talk Radio, which you can find at deeptalkradio.com. Don't forget to head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, where you can peruse the Spaced Out Radio store and read the encounter online dealing with everything strange, paranormal, and odd. Tonight, I have a treat for all you guys and gals out there. Tonight, we will be talking to and getting to know Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society. The Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society was formed in 1999 to help people and study paranormal phenomena. We conduct our investigations with a scientific approach. We feel that an open mind is the most important tool you can use, and we do not have specialists, certified ghost hunters, or demonologists. We have dedicated people with backgrounds that help us research the unknown using critical thinking to get real results. And tonight, from the Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society, we have Bryan Bonner. And Bryan, for over 2 decades, has examined a wide range of reported paranormal phenomenon, including ghosts, poltergeists, psychics, UFOs, conspiracy theories, urban legends, and much more. Unlike others in the field, Bryan has made sure not to run around cemeteries screaming and scaring the group with overactive imaginations. From the field to the lab, he tests bizarre beliefs and practices, conducts experiments and on-site investigations, and recreates unusual events. He has confronted hauntings, Ouija board activity, levitation, psychic readings, alien abductions, and telephones that try to talk to the dead. With each extensive experience and training using a knowledge of equipment and, most important, tools, critical thinking. Bryan utilizes stage magic, mentalism, and science to seek the evidence to solve the mysteries and close cases. His work has earned the respect of believers and skeptics alike, and earned the fear of fraudsters and charlatans. In some hilarious encounters, he outwits the con artists. He is an expert at exposing houses, pranks, and scams, and creating some to prove a point. Being honest has won him many nemesises, and Bryan has truth on his side. Bryan is a founding member of the Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society, a group that has served the general public nationwide. On a daily basis, their professional team is contacted by real people who are frightened by weird and sometimes terrifying occurrences that happen in their businesses and homes. It is their mission to help these people and to educate the public. This is achieved through humor and creativity and compassion. Bryan's experience is professional photography, electromagnetic field study, certified thermal camera operation, deception detection, digital imaging, audio recording and processing, video editing and software testing, as well as historic research, public speaking, and public performance. Hey Bryan, welcome to the show tonight. I'm so sorry for the delay.
That's okay. It was fun listening to the breakdown, so that's always a plus.
Yeah. I was like, oh, hold on. I had to call you on the phone and let you know I'm still here. My phone was just slightly unplugged. Or not my phone, my computer was slightly unplugged and decided to die as we were doing the intro. So,
it's amazing how they like electricity.
Yeah. And my house is quite haunted. So tell us a little more about yourself. Like, when was your first paranormal experience?
That's actually a really weird one to ask me. I can't say as I know because I'm still having a hard time defining what is and what isn't a paranormal experience. But what I would say is I've been interested in the paranormal for as far back as I can remember. And one of the things that really led me into this, and we were kind of discussing something similar before the show, back when I was really young, my mother really enjoyed horror movies and wanted somebody to watch them with her, and unfortunately I was the volunteer. So I was a freaked out little 5-year-old, which, you know, you're watching movies like The Exorcist and you're that young, you need some help. So what ended up happening is she started telling me how they make movies, how they do the special effects, all of that, so I wouldn't be afraid anymore. And then years later, people are putting these taglines on their movies of, you know, this is based on actual events, this is based on true stories. And it kind of made me stop and think for a minute. I'm like, hold on, this is the stuff that, you know, Mom told me was all made up, and now they're saying it's real. I need to find out for myself. And that was long before I started doing this officially, so I'll say probably 35 years ago. Ever since then, it's just been getting, you know, more and more intense as far as much time and effort that I put into it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people that do this say, well, it's actually quite boring, but to me it really isn't. Even if it is really quiet, you just have that suspense and other things going on that just draws you in and wanting to know the story of this entity, if it does actually exist. And sometimes it can be just a house settling or pipes or, you know, electromagnetic phenomena from the wires not being insulated correctly and causing hallucinations, etc. I mean, there's so many different variations of what a case involves.
Well, I tell people, regardless of the ghost aspect of it, we get to witness some amazing locations. We get to research history that, you know, unfortunately is being lost, and we may be the only people that are going to save the history intact, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And it has so many other things going on in it that people don't realize are actually there.
Yeah, it's interesting what is out there, and, there's so many questions. Why are they still here? And I believe a lot of it has to do with what their belief system is, and you can, I don't know, cling on to certain things that don't set you free. So what early experiences in life led you to be a paranormal investigator? Was it watching those scary movies with your mom and your family, or I don't know, you're saying you're still trying to understand if there are actual paranormal encounters. You haven't really had one of those?
Well, what I can say is the more in-depth over the years that we've gotten into the research, the more claims that we've looked at, and not even the increase in technology per se, but just the increase in base knowledge of psychology, physiology, things like that. The things that we would have when we first got into this started accepting as some sort of, hopefully proof of the paranormal, are becoming easier and easier to explain. As we evolve, science kind of catches up with things and explains it. The same reason that we don't go out and worship the sun every morning anymore, because we understand how that works. And being able to look at these claims individually has been really helpful to say, okay, let's start, at the beginning and actually decode these and see what's happening. And it's made a huge difference as far as being able to, and this is a really weird, how can I put this? It's a misused term in the paranormal world. We've actually been able to help people because we've been able to explain things to them and let them get on with their lives. And I think that's really important. And it's also important to be able to educate the public in what is real and what, obviously wouldn't be. So hopefully we can help things before people start having weird perceptions.
Yeah. So you said what things obviously can't be. What are some examples of that?
Well, we've looked at a lot of things, and I'll kind of back out here and answer one of your questions for you. One of the things that really got me intrigued in the whole paranormal field in the late 90s, as you were reading, I have a huge background in photography. That's what I actually went to college for. And I can tell you, ego aside, photography I completely understand. The whole digital side of it. I teach Photoshop. I get all of it. And the things even back then that were being passed off as paranormal photographs really intrigued me, because to me, I looked at it and it's like, oh, hold on a minute. I understand, how that was accidentally made. So I started kind of just looking at things like that, saying, all right, give me what you think might be a ghost photo and let's look into it. And it's been really nice because with technology moving forward, it used to be somebody would hand me a photograph and say, I don't remember that much about taking it, but this is what I remember. Now, if somebody gives me a digital image, assuming that it hasn't been altered, the cameras record a lot of information, where it was taken, when it was taken, all of the conditions. So you can actually look at the image and have a lot more information. But with just the photography background, being able to look at a lot of things and say, oh, I know what this is off of the top. It was frustrating at the beginning because, unfortunately, the paranormal field is something that everybody wants to get into, and there's no real training to be had. So I always equate it to somebody watching a TV show about a doctor and going, hey, that looks like fun. Let's go operate on somebody. You can't do that. So just the field in general has changed so much just with the technology and, like I say, the general knowledge of what we're looking at. So those claims can range from a lot of different things. We've had cases where people have seen things roaming the house. We've had cases where people have had footsteps in the house that, without some pretty serious investigation and using some critical thinking behind it, would have easily been able to say, well, I can't explain it, therefore it's a ghost. But we've learned over the years that that's a really, I can say, bad thing for the client. I don't know how many times in the middle of the night I get a phone call or an email from somebody saying, I've just had a paranormal team out here. They've confirmed that I have X amount of ghosts, demons, whatever it may be, and they just left. What do I do? And at that point, you can't even really go in and try and figure out if there is a natural explanation for it. It's kind of go in and patch together this poor family. So it's frustrating, but at the same time, like I say, it's nice to be able to go in and actually, hopefully, help some people with some, just mundane answers.
So how did you guys come to be Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society? And how large are you? How many members do you have?
Well, it initially started back mid-1998. I had been looking all over the place back then for a group to become involved with. And, strangely enough, pre-2000, there weren't a lot of groups out there. Mm-hmm. It was really small. There were 2 groups active locally. And, kind of like back to the previous statement there of, I looked at what they were putting forward as evidence, and it wasn't. It was easily explainable. And I said, if we're ever going to get anything that's a legitimate answer, if we're going to move this field forward at all, we need to do something different. So after a couple of years of frustration, I said, that's it. Found one guy that was interested in it, and we started it off. And it was about 99 that we actually started everything up officially. But at that point, we've had members come and go, and generally we've got somewhere around 4 or 5 core people that we work with. But because of the way that we do our investigations, we have a lot of on-call people. Because we found a lot of what you wouldn't think are related fields that are absolutely amazing to help us. We have physicists, medical doctors. We've worked with a lot of geologists. We have magicians. It's kind of a bizarre thing to say, but magicians are a wonderful thing because they can see things from a completely different perspective. And that's actually taught us a lot. Audio engineers, that if we can't figure something out, we can send to them. Video specialists, just any field you can imagine, we've had to bring in. And these people love it because they get to play Ghost Hunter for a while, and we enjoy it because it actually, increases our knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we like, for Four Corners Paranormal Investigations, we like to get together once monthly and educate ourselves on different aspects of the paranormal. And so we have a core team, and those people pay dues, and those people always show up for the meetings. And then we have the team that's just there for the fun of it. And so when it comes to our investigations, unless you're at the classes learning and educating yourself, because we don't want ignorant people on our investigations. We want you to know what you're doing and how to protect yourself, and what different gifts we all have and what we can do to work together. But that's interesting. It's good to have people from different walks of life coming in and, putting their knowledge out there and helping the person. And, like you, we don't charge. We feel like we'd be taking advantage if we had. There's not a lot of help out there, like you were saying before, for people that are going through this. So, we just like to lend a hand and go broke doing this.
Well, and one thing that I've talked to people about is, let's forget what we're researching and just look at it as a study. If you were going to go into any other field of study, which you'd probably have to work through university or some other business to do, they pay the people that are involved in the research. I mean, that are actually being studied. A research participant, it's not great money, but if you've ever spent any time in college, you can make some spare beer money by spending a weekend having somebody test something on you or do some psychological thing. So the fact that the clients aren't charging us to come to their homes or businesses, I think is actually interesting.
Well, yeah, and you have to sign that certain paperwork that if you do damage anything, that you will replace it. And, there's certain things you have to do. You just can't go in willy-nilly because you have to cover not only yourself, but the people that you're working for. And we have a lot of people just graciously opening up their places for us because they want help. They want to know what's going on. Just this last week, Mia and we went into X-Rock, which is a radio station here in Durango, to investigate a haunting which was very active, knocking things off of boards, knocking soap over in the bathroom. It actually even, after locking up the whole place and going to the bathroom, this desk person heard someone knock on the door 3 times and say, "Hey, are you in there?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll be out in a minute." And then he's like, "Who the heck was that? I locked everything up." But we actually came to discover that it was not just one, it was 3 different ghosts. There was a male named Jim, a female named Carol, and a little boy named Tom. So it was quite interesting, and this was during the day, and it was very active. But we're going to go out for a night expedition and see if we can solve more of this puzzle, because they're tearing down the building soon, and we don't want the spirits to be lost or askew or whatnot, whatever's going on there. And I actually got touched on this investigation. At first I felt this tingle on my right shoulder, and then all of a sudden I felt this pressure like somebody was digging their finger into my shoulder, and I was like, ow, and I looked behind me, nobody's there. And so that was pretty interesting, and that was the male figure in this group, and he was quite aggressive. He didn't want us in his area, and he was very stern, not only towards Carol but towards little Tom. The adult's name was Jim. I think I mentioned that, but I wasn't sure this last time. But yeah, it was very interesting, and even having that physical contact, I haven't felt that on a lot of cases. Have you been touched or anything like that on an investigation?
I can say that, and that's one of the other ones that we've had a few experiences that we've been able to explain away. There have been a few, and honestly, it's the unexplained ones that kind of keep us going. I'll give you one of my favorite ones. We were at a private investigation, and we had... let me see if I can nail the whole story together here for you.
Okay.
It was a family, several generations living inside of a home, and all but the father were kind of freaked out by the whole thing, and this would have been the grandfather to some of them. But he was very rarely home. He was kind of a workaholic. So when they contacted us, we went out and checked it out, and the entire family, and there was 3 generations of them, were sleeping in one bedroom.
Oh, wow.
The thing that I found interesting about this, though, is they claimed that this bedroom was like the hot spot of the house, which made no sense to me at all.
Yeah, and everybody's sleeping in there. That doesn't make sense.
So we set up some equipment, thought we'd, monitor, see what was happening in there. And this was quite a while ago, so we weren't nearly as far along as we are at this point. But it was probably 10 or 11 at night. Actually, it was probably later than that. And we realized that the whole family was just up sitting with us. And one of the things that we do, I've kind of written extensively on this, is in order to try and figure out what's going on, you need to keep the circumstances the same as when whatever it was reported. So if the family was just going about their daily thing, they were sleeping, they were doing whatever, forget the fact that we're there and go do whatever it is that you were doing. We will watch, we will monitor. And this has actually been really difficult for a lot of other teams that we've dealt with. One of the things, not only do they want to be right in the middle of it, and I still want somebody to try and explain this to me. The first thing they do is turn out all the lights. And the thing that I don't understand about that, everybody has had some sort of at least what they would consider paranormal experience. Mm-hmm. Or they know somebody that's, quote, seen a ghost. How many people, and I'll ask you this question, how many people you know that say that they've seen a ghost were sitting in a pitch dark room when it happened? They can't. Because it's pitch dark.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an obvious answer. So, what's the purpose of changing the circumstances to make it spookier? I mean, admittedly, you turn on the infrared cameras and you get the creepy video from it and all that. Yeah, it's going to mess with you psychologically. But if you're trying to figure out what it was that happened to see if maybe there is a natural explanation or something was misunderstood, you need the circumstances to remain the same. And if you don't, either you're going to find something different or you're not going to be able to explain it at all. So, that's been a huge, huge deal for us. And when we were at this investigation, this is one of the few times that we said, okay, you guys are normally in this bedroom and it's pitch dark because you're going to sleep. So we want you to go in there and lay down and go to bed. And they were really hesitant. They were afraid to go into the bedroom. And I said, don't worry, we're out here. We can see everything that's going on. We can see in the dark with the cameras. All is well. Like, if the big green thing jumps out of the closet, I'll be in there to help. I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'll be in there to help. So they decided that they were going to go in shifts. So the first two go in and slept about an hour and a half, no problem. Second ones were ready to go in. It was a mother and daughter. And they said, we're not going to go in there unless you go in with us, and pointed over at me. And I looked at him and I said, I already said, if the big green thing jumps out of the closet, I'm just going to be freaked out with you. So, but if it makes you feel better, I'll go in with you. So I did. And they were snoring up a storm. And in the meanwhile, I didn't hear anything, but I distinctly felt something slapping me in the face. Not hard, just kind of an attention getter. And the only thing that's recorded on it is a video of me looking like a complete moron saying, I hope you guys are getting this on video because something's in here slapping me. What it was, I haven't got a clue. But yeah, it's the experiences like that keep you going. It's the being able to find history about places, being able to visit places that you generally wouldn't be able to go to, that really keep us, doing this time and time again. And like you were saying, people tend to just give you the keys to the location. And I've actually scalded a few people over that, because we've been at some very important locations, both historically or for other purposes, that they just hand us the keys and walk away for the weekend. They don't know who we are. I mean, there hasn't been a background check run on us. They went to a website and found these guys. And I'm like, okay, you're going to be lucky this time, but quit handing the keys to everybody. At least have somebody stay with them so you know that they're not, stealing your business or whatever it is. But I'm amazed at what people will do with the perceived authority of a team of ghost hunters coming in. It just freaks me out every time it happens.
Yeah, and, sometimes they'll come in just for, giggles or whatnot. There's words I want to use, but I can't because we're on air. Mm-hmm. But, they'll go in just for fun and then leave a mess for somebody else to come clean up. They don't even consider the client in this issue, and that's the most important thing. Let's deal with this living entity and try to help this non-living entity if we can, if it even exists, because, there are cases where people just want the attention, or they're mentally incompetent in some way. They have some mental disabilities going on and some hallucinations, etc.
Well, and that's something that we've found out with the prevalence of, and I'm as big of a culprit as anybody else, the paranormal media. When we first started this up, ghosts were not a big topic. Just as an example, I remember back when I first started doing this, I went out and bought myself a VCR. Kind of tells you how long ago it was. And every Halloween, I would record all of the ghost specials, because that's the only time you'd be able to watch something like that. And now, I guarantee you, if I was to turn on the TV, I could probably find 10 different shows running nothing, or channels running nothing but ghost shows right now. So the belief in the paranormal, how can I put this? The belief in the paranormal media's version of the paranormal has increased amazingly high, to the point that we've gone on investigations and people are upset because we're not bringing a TV crew with us. Or one of my favorite examples for this would be, we went to a home and it was a single mother with a son and daughter. And we sat down in the living room and started talking. And the mother says, "Have you ever watched that show, Paranormal State?" I said, "Yeah, unfortunately I have. I know the show. Why?" And she said, "Well, you know the demon that follows the lead investigator around?" I said, "Yeah, Belial." And she kind of freaked out because I said it. And she's like, "It's in my son's bedroom." And I said, and her son's like 7 years old. Mm-hmm. And I said, "How do you know that?" They were like, "Well, we watch the show all the time, and all the things that are happening on it happen in his room." And I said, I'm not going to bother doing anything other than telling you guys, turn off the TV, go to the park, read a book, do something, get yourself away from the paranormal stuff, and I guarantee you that's going to stop. But people are so steeped in it right now that, they watch the paranormal TV show, which, strangely enough, I've been a part of quite a few of them, and they're kind of misinformed, so everything becomes a ghost. And it, unfortunately, is kind of damaging people at this point.
Yeah, it is, and like you said, it's kind of coming at all angles. There's so many different shows out there. Back in the day, it was just Paranormal State and whatever else was out there, because I wasn't watching that. I was actually watching Paranormal State, but right now there's so many different shows out there, and it is hitting us from all angles, and there is that sort of hysteria that some people get.
Well, and one of the things that people don't realize about, and I'll use the dreaded phrase paranormal reality television, or reality television for that matter, is, well, first of all, watch any of them, and as the credits are rolling by at 1 billion miles an hour, stop them, read them. You will find a lot of catchphrases, like docudrama, docusoap, which means partially scripted. You'll also find for entertainment purposes only tagged all over these things. Because back when these shows first started up, and I'll use season 1 of Ghost Hunters as an example, they never found anything. It was just like going on a real ghost investigation. It was really dry. It was fun if you really were into it, but it wasn't something that made for really good television. And all of these production companies found out, well, maybe if I throw a weird sound in there, or put a cliffhanger where it sounds like something's going to happen, all of a sudden the ratings go up, the money starts coming in, and it's a big deal. And once that formula was built, it's unstoppable. And they aren't doing it just with ghosts. Any paranormal topic, it's happening. We have UFOs and Bigfoot, and you name it, it's out there with just these really, low-rent production companies pumping these things out because, unfortunately, the public loves them. And I always tell people, it's okay to watch these shows like this. Just consider them to be a sitcom, and all will be well. Because they're fun to watch, but they're not real investigations. It's just like I tell a lot of people, there's multiple kinds of paranormal, ghost hunting you can do. There's the type of groups that, kind of like what we do, will go to locations and legitimately try and research something, which is horrendously boring most of the time, but it's great because occasionally we come up with some sort of a explanation. But then you have the others that traipse off to the cemetery every night and scare each other. And I'll tell you, if I had my choice right now, going out to the cemetery and scaring myself is a lot more fun. It's a ball. But it's not ghost hunting. It's not paranormal research. And yet the term ghost hunting's kind of really gotten a bad name over the years because of things like this.
Yeah, and that leads me to the next question. What is the difference between ghost hunting and paranormal investigation?
Well, we've taken it a step farther because those two really started to blend. But they only blended at the ghost side. You have to remember that paranormal consists of a lot of different topics. It's not just ghosts. It can be everything from ghosts, Bigfoot, UFO, cryptids, psychics, telekinesis, even things like if somebody says they have a device that can talk to the dead, or if they have a device that can cure disease but seems to break all of the laws of physics, that's paranormal. So it's a broad spectrum of things that you can actually go investigate. But because of the fact that both of them were kind of getting a tainted name, we decided that we were going to come up with a different term, which is a paranormal claims investigator. And what we've meant that to become is we investigate every claim individually on its own merits. We don't jump to conclusions that because we had something like this once before and it was X, this is. Or we don't immediately say this this has to be a ghost. We're going to go talk to it. Or there's no way this could be a ghost because we know what it is. You have to go in and look at each claim on its own. And I don't know a lot of people that are out there doing it that way, but I think that's really the difference between the definitions. And just to kind of show you the growth, earlier I was talking about how when we first got into this, there were about 3 groups locally that were kind of part-time, but still doing the ghost hunting thing. About 4 years ago, I was involved in a national study of paranormal groups, ghost hunting groups, UFO groups, all the different variations. In the state of Colorado, there were over 300.
Well, I have to say, Colorado is quite active, and I'm not sure exactly why, but we have a lot of activity, and we have come across those cases where, you know, this person is just full of it and wanting attention, but for the most part, we pick up on actual activity, and I'm not sure if this is because, you know, all the people that came out west back in the day and all the triumphs or turmoils or different things that happen to them, perhaps they're stuck for different reasons, whether it's property or gold or whatnot, or your favorite bar even. I mean, there's so many different scenarios, but it does seem like quite an active state, and it's kind of funny how you said that there's over 300 groups. That just shows me there's a lot of open-minded people.
Well, to me, it really showed me that there was a huge prevalence of people. It started right about the same time that the TV shows started up. And the whole media really started getting involved. That was interesting.
Yeah.
And that's when I saw a lot of people that had no qualifications getting involved in it. That was part of that study that I thought was kind of interesting, was some basic questions of why did you get involved? What education do you have that you think would be, you know, purposeful in the field of the investigations? And most of the people flat out admitted that they were TV trained. They were interested because they were watching ghost hunters. They were watching ghost adventurers. They were watching Paranormal State. And they thought it would be something neat to do.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I was watching, nothing against the general field, the education of the people that were doing it drop. Before, go back into the 60s, 70s, 80s, people that were doing any kind of paranormal research were basically based out of a university.
Mm-hmm.
This was something that was really being dealt with on a very professional level. And now, anybody that wants to pick up an audio recorder and head off to the cemetery is, unfortunately, by the public, considered to be just as legitimate as somebody that has decades of training. So, I don't know. I think it's oversaturated at this point.
Well, and I kind of think that people just kind of try to get help where they can, you know. They're not really worried about the time that they've served or whatnot doing it. And as far as paranormal shows go, watching Paranormal State was the beginning of helping me come out of my paranormal closet. I had dealt with stuff all my life as far as the paranormal goes, and watching these shows, watching what they do, made me more comfortable and more like it was accepted because there were so many people watching it and tuning in and finding interest. And then it was in 2012, we had a tragedy in our community, and I was just like, enough is enough, and I'm just going to go out there and help this mother in any way I can because her son is missing. And I'm sitting here holding my baby son, just, you know, hoping the best for this little boy. But, you know, there's different steps and different stages to getting out there. And so I don't try to look down on anyone for getting out there and doing the legwork and whatever they can do. But at the same time, you know, I find it wrong and unacceptable if you don't know what you're doing, you don't educate yourself, and you're actually going out for fun and putting people in harm's way. If you're not in for it for the right reasons, it's better to stay away and let the professionals take care of it. But a lot of times, do you find that you guys have to come in and clean up a mess that somebody's made?
When we first started in this, absolutely not. Now, that's most of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the reasons that we have pulled back on private cases a lot. Because of that exact reason.
Well,
we weren't
Bryan,
able to go in. Mm-hmm.
On that note, we have to go to our first break, but we'll be back in just one moment. All right, you guys don't go anywhere.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th
Okay,
in
hold on
108
one
Mile
second.
Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
There's news, and there's The Encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Thiemer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Tonight's show and topic of discussion do not necessarily reflect the opinion of Spaced Out Radio, SOR Media, or its hosts. Listener discretion is advised. Here comes the second hour of Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa Nicole Thomas. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. And you can follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT. Now, back to the show.
Hey guys, welcome back and thank you so much for hanging in there. We had an issue first hour with the computer being partially unplugged. I don't know how that happened, but it decided to die during the intro. But anywho's, we got that back up and running, and so happy to have you guys all here tonight. It's so good to hang with you guys and chat with you in the chat room and listen to your questions, etc. Tonight we have Bryan from the Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society. Bryan, welcome back.
Good to be back.
Good to have you. So, where did we let off?
That's a good question. Where did we leave off?
We were talking about... hold on. Let me pick up my paper. What's the difference between paranormal and paranormal investigators and ghost hunters? And then we were going on to different people we deal with in that field. We went off on many tangents. So yeah, I'm trying to retrace what was that last track we were on, but I can't remember it. So where do you investigate? Are you just out of Denver? Do you investigate the surrounding areas?
I remember where I was going with this.
Okay, good.
It just took a little bit of jogging. We don't deal with a lot of private cases anymore. A lot of homes. And the reason being was because of the exposure to the paranormal, and people really... This is where we're finding people that want us to bring a camera crew with us. This is where we're finding people that, unfortunately, and I don't know why, but it seems that the exposure that's been going on has really taken people that have some sort of obvious psychological problem, which is why we've worked with so many people in the psychological field. It's given them a, how can I put this, excuse to do things and blame it on something else. We have had a lot of cases that it's a classic "the devil made me do it" syndrome. And we've had a few that were claimed demon cases that local groups had confirmed. These people, we don't know what to do. We're calling you guys in because we know they have demons. Well, the reason they knew they had demons is because the family literally were beating each other up and saying, well, it was when the demon was around, so it's the devil's fault. And it's gotten to the point where it's difficult to deal with. We want to investigate claims of the paranormal. We don't want to have to be psychiatrists. And it's become worse and worse with things like that. In fact, last year we actually had a case that ended up in court over child abuse because of what other people had perceived as paranormal experiences, and unfortunately weren't. So, yeah, we still like the cases, but it's very difficult because of the things that are being blamed on the paranormal in the name of getting away with whatever it is that you want.
So you don't think that there's that chance of, there is actually a possession, and it doesn't have to be for a long time. It can just be for a moment when somebody just lashes out and hits you. It can even be, one of our cases was a little baby boy. He'd just get this look in his eyes and punch his mom in the face and then go back to being his normal self and not even remember doing that.
Well, it's interesting because, I can't say 100% that no, it couldn't be possession because you can't prove a negative. The current, and I mean very current advancements in study of the brain have shown that there are a lot of, and they're testing it in ranges of children from about 3 to about 8 years old, that in monitoring brain activity, they're actually showing precursors exactly in what you're showing or you're talking about that are precursors to children that are most likely growing up to have major problems, everything from being a criminal to a murderer. There's talk right now about at what point do they have to be before we actually go in and work with these kids before they've done anything. It's kind of that, that sci-fi thing of, we know you're going to be a criminal, we're going to fix it now. And it's psychological, it's not psychological problems based on family life. It's not psychological problems based on conditions. It's psychological problems based on physiological and biological problems.
Yeah, such as genetics.
Well, that, and there's a lot of things, even minor, but some traumatic head injuries during birth can cause things like this. One case I was just studying about, this little boy, he was, I believe, 7 years old, normal most of the time, and he walked in one day and was just glowing about how he had just mutilated the neighbor's cat and then snapped back into normal again. And he was taken, and they did some study on him, and sure enough, this child has all of the precursors for these really bad psychological problems. So, found early enough, absolutely. That's something that not only needs to be discovered and treated, but it's amazing that we can do that. And I'll give you an example of a case that we had, as much as I can. We had a case where there was a very small girl. I think she was 2 at the time. And the family claimed that she was possessed and levitating. And when we went in and actually discussed with them what they had seen, how it had actually taken place, we told them, in working with some of the doctors that we do, these are signs that can be misinterpreted as some very unique body movements, but it appears to be epilepsy. And they absolutely would not believe us. And they went around us, found other groups that would confirm that, absolutely, this little girl is having, horrible possession. She's levitating. The house is cursed. I just went on and on. And years later, this little girl, because she wasn't treated for the epilepsy that she had, and I believe she's now 7 or 8, is in a semi-vegetative state because her brain was never treated properly. So because the family decided to say, and I quote from the police report, it was a spiritual problem, not a medical problem, this child's life is destroyed forever. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons that when we go do something, assuming it's a case like that, I hate to bring the Catholic Church into it because generally I wouldn't, but just like you would with a possession through the Catholic Church, before you assume that it's something like that, you have to go through every other step. You have to get whoever it is involved, especially if it's a child. Not only if it's a child, but I think a child is more important than anything else when it comes to this, to get them checked out. Send them to an MD, have physicals run on them, send them to a psychiatrist, send them to people that can rule out anything else. Because, like I say, even the Catholic Church, they aren't just going to go throw an exorcism at you. They are going to go out of their way to prove that you aren't possessed, because that's the last thing that they will conclude. And I think that's actually a good thing because, like I was saying earlier, there's so many things out there now that 50 years ago we would have taken as some sort of paranormal thing. And we know that they aren't now. Back then, things were different. And we are still striving to crawl out of the mud when it comes to science. So there are so many things that we don't know. And just because we don't know them, we need to study them more.
Yeah, and it doesn't make you ignorant. And if you say, I don't know, that shouldn't be a bad thing. At least you can admit that and, you're not being deceptive or whatnot. But
well, and that's where we draw the line, is people say, when do you say a house is haunted? And our answer is, we draw the line at, I don't know what it is right now. I don't have enough information. We don't have enough information. Because while if you have spiritual beliefs, it's wonderful. And people that are having what they perceive or what may be a haunting or some sort of paranormal event that isn't terrifying them, that they just want to know what it is and we can't come up with an explanation, the answer is enjoy this, because you're experiencing something that most people don't get to. I can't prove one way or another what it is or isn't. But a lot of things, there's just not enough information. I can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that X house is haunted, because we do require, scientific protocol. We want to be able to take findings to the outside of the paranormal community. We want to be able to go to the scientific community. We want to be able to go to the general public and say, we found this. And it's kept us running rather clean because we can't keep running to them and saying we think we found something. because all of a sudden we become that kid crying wolf. So we've always hoped that, if we do find something that's just earth-shattering, and a few times we found things that eventually we figured out what they were, but if we go out to the general public, if we go out to the scientific community and say, we don't know what this is, can you help? They take us seriously. And that's very difficult. But once again, it depends on your perspective too. If you're going into this being a person that's doing it, you're this quote spiritual person, you can't apply science to that. Those two don't mix. And we want to be able to do that, because if anything's ever going to be proven or disproven, if anything's ever going to be accepted by the public in total, that's the only way that at least I can see it working out with any long-term proof, with any hard evidence. That's the only way I can see it happening. We travel just as far as our wallets will take us, which generally is the Colorado area. We've gone out of the state a few times to different locations. Some of our members have done a few investigations around the country, but generally we stick to Colorado. And like I say, it's just because of money. As you know, it's a very expensive hobby.
It is, indeed.
And there's not a lot of money to be made in the field, with the exception of, if you want to sell out and, make all sorts of bold claims, there's a bit of money to be made, but not much. And even people who have big names in the field, there's still no money in it to speak of.
Mm-hmm.
Even television shows, books, whatever, no. It's a nice supplemental income, but with the exception of a couple of rarities out there. And even the people that are big in the field, that like them or not, they're making their money doing tours. They're showing up at a local, paranormal convention and signing autographs, and which still doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I'll run with it. But I just don't understand. That's one of the big things about the field recently, is people get into it, for the, to quote Indiana Jones, fortune and glory, and there isn't any. It's, if you want to help people, if you want to learn some things, if you want to visit some really cool locations, it's a great field to get into.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, it's definitely changing right now too. There's a really big flux happening as far as people getting involved in it and how they're getting involved in it.
Yeah, there's different variations in different sects and just different ways that people approach it. Different beliefs. Beliefs is a big thing.
And that's kind of what I was getting into. There's two different aspects to that. You have people that are getting into it with their beliefs. And beliefs will never work in science. They aren't compatible with each other.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the answers that we've had to give over the years, is people say, so what do you believe? And the stock answer now is, we aren't given the luxury to believe or not believe in anything. We have to go in with a completely neutral, open mind and accept whatever there is. And that's difficult for a lot of people, because I mean, after all, the bulk of the people are calling it ghost hunting, and if you're hunting something that isn't there, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, it is a fun way to spend your time, whether you find
absolutely.
something or not. I really enjoy it, even the sitting there in the quiet, anticipating something to happen. But more often than not, we do find something. But there are those times where it's internal. It's something mental for the person and something that they need to go see a psychologist or a shrink for to get past some past scarring and such with them growing up. We had a case down in Bloomfield, New Mexico, and this girl had some really traumatic issues with her upbringing, and they were having some really bad activity as far as being attacked, her husband being ripped off the couch, all kinds of different things. And we went around. We did find some hot spots and what we believed to be a vortex, but we weren't sure. And we did some cleansing, etc. But the more she talked to us, the more we found out what was going on with her. And, no matter what we do, if she doesn't go get help for her issues, this problem's just going to keep reoccurring because, the mind is a powerful thing and things can make themselves real by what your mind puts out there, thought form or whatnot. And so I kind of think that's what was going on with her. Either she was feeding something or it was something psychological with her. And, having that Christian-based belief of it's not my problem, it's something else, they just weren't dealing with it. They weren't willing to do it. And so we haven't heard from them. So we don't know if their issue is still going on. Hopefully it alleviated itself and she did get some help like we suggested. But, I mean...
Well, one thing to bring up there is something else that I think, as much as we try and stay away from the religious aspect of things, it's very important, and I think this is something that's been lost. Most people in the paranormal field tend to have their own religious beliefs. I mean, culturally, that's what's going to happen anyway. That's not a problem. But they bring it into the investigation. And when they do that, I can give you an example. Well, I could give you a bunch of examples, but I'll use kind of a standard one here of, we went to a house once and they had all sorts of bizarre claims, but we noticed throughout the house that there were bowls of milk all over the place and bowls of rice all over the place. And the thing is, thankfully we talked to them, they're Hindu. And they were giving offerings to the spirits to appease them, to make them stop what they were doing. But one of the things we've learned over the years is it seems to be one of the worst things that a paranormal team can bring with them is their own religion. If I go into somebody's house and they're Jewish, for example, and I'm Roman Catholic, I can do more damage by trying to explain to them what's going on through my religious beliefs than any ghost activity could.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the most important things for anybody in the field to do is get a really good, firm knowledge on world religions. Because if you go out into the public, you're going to be dealing with all of them. And you have to be able to deal with these people not only on a personal level, but you have to be able to speak to them at their religious level. And, for example, if I go into somebody's house who is, well, Hindu's a good example, and I say, oh, you have demons, I might as well be telling them they have bridge trolls, because it's just not something that is relating to them in their belief system. So, and I've kind of used that answer on a lot of interviews, because people will say, have you ever dealt with the demonic case? I'm like, what religion are you? Because it may not have been based on what your concept of what a demon is. And it's the same thing, people say, and you were talking about it, go in and do a cleansing. I've actually seen people freaked out over that because it's not a ceremony that's familiar in their belief system, and they absolutely are baffled by what's going on in their home, to the point that it literally has done damage to them psychologically, because they're like, what were these people doing? Why were they burning things in my house? Why were they, lighting candles? Why were they doing this? I don't understand this. It's not part of my core belief system. So being able to work with people in their own belief system is really important, and it's something that I think is being missed a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have a question in the chat room. Shar is asking, or saying, it seems to me many groups are out there playing and not realizing there are demons in danger. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say something that will offend so many people, but
Go for it.
Yeah, in all the years I've been doing this, and believe me, in 20 years, we have been to every, rumored to be the most haunted place in the world, private places that other teams have labeled as, demonic, whatever it may be. And I'll precurse that a little bit more. The room that I'm sitting in, which is my living room, is kind of a museum to, there's a lot of horror stuff in here, but it's kind of an occult museum too. I've got items from every weird religion out there. I've got voodoo dolls hanging all over the place. I have, are you familiar with the Fox sisters who started spiritualism?
Yeah, with the knocking and such.
I have one of their first seance tables. It's my coffee table. It's about 2 feet behind me.
Oh, nice.
There are just over 50 Ouija boards in the room with me right now, dating back to the late 1800s. During our investigations, I have never, because once again, we're trying not to deal with the spiritual aspects of it. We're trying to deal with the let's do this scientifically. I have never as much as said anything of protection. In fact, we've gone in the exact opposite. Just, and jokingly, because we really don't go to that side, is, hey, if there's anything here, come on home with me. I'd like to study you. And nothing. Absolutely nothing. I sleep in this house well every night. And if stuff like that was going to happen, I would think it would be, quote, like the Amityville house here. Not that the Amityville house was haunted, but it's a good representation. So, are people playing and doing things? I think people are playing, and like I was saying previously, they're going out to the haunted location. They're going out to the cemetery. They're going out to some place that's got some sort of an urban legend around it, perhaps. And they're terrifying each other, which is fun, until you get home that night and you live alone. Mm-hmm. And you remember the stories of, the demon that followed them home, the ghost that was in the back of the car, the floating head that you thought you may have seen in the cemetery. And I think that's really, it's more of a psychological breakdown, because one thing that I've learned over all these years of doing this is one of the worst things that we, as especially investigators, but even people reporting these claims, have is our own psychology. Our brains do terrible things to us. Mm-hmm. And, there's reasons for it. Most of them, psychological conditioning or even survival instincts from the past that we don't use anymore. And because of that, we love to scare ourselves sometimes a little bit too much. I'm addicted to horror movies. Why? I like the scare. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you have to ask yourself that. People that are into horror movies, into thrill rides, into extreme sports, It's the same feeling you get when you're out on an investigation and something may have happened. We're all, at a base level wanting that adrenaline fix. We want those endorphins to kick in. And the more you do it, the more your body likes it, and the more you're going to do it to yourself. So it's hard to filter that out. It's just like I tell people, it's very difficult to stay neutral when you go into this. I'll give you an example. You go into this creepy old castle. I mean, you go into this building and it's like, yeah, there's a ghost here. I don't have any doubt about it, because look at this place. How could there not be? But you can't do that. You have to go in and say, okay, whatever it is here or not here, I'm just going to investigate it to the best of my ability and report my findings. So, I don't know, if people claim that, something is following them home or they're having bad experiences because of things that they've encountered in places, it sounds horrible, but, in a way, I really wish it would have happened to me, because if it could, it should have.
Well, we have another question here in the chat room, and Alyssa was wondering, Bryan, what are your opinions on the differences between a portal and a vortex?
That's a really good question, because those are two words that really don't have definitions. The origins of both of those words actually go back to Hollywood, because up until, and it may have been Ghostbusters, I'm not sure, there were a few words that had kind of died out, and that was one of them. The problem that we have in anything like that is definitely something on the spiritual side. Because in order to prove that some sort of a doorway, I'm going to use that word instead, because vortex and portal and all of that have been overused to death. In order to do that, we would have to come up with, I'm going to say, 100% proof that whatever it was coming through, or was coming through it, was actually coming through it. And while on the spiritual level, people may say that that's happening, on a recordable, measurable, provable, it hasn't. Not to say we aren't trying. That's part of the game that we're in. So, what's the difference between the two? I don't know, because by definition, I can't tell you what it is in the first place.
Well, we've had people on here talking about such things, and, as far as ley lines crossing and such, and, having the grow shrink effect and different things that you can actually record. So if you can actually record that, how is it not real?
Well, under scientifically testable conditions, they aren't. I mean, ley lines, let me give you an example of this. The word energy has been misappropriated, I guess. I was doing a talk with a woman who laid out a bunch of metaphysical tools. She had crystals and all sorts of different things out, and was discussing energy, which is, ley lines, energy. And I had to stop her and go, what do you mean by energy? And she says, well, they put off energy fields. I was like, okay, if they put off energy fields, those energy fields should be measurable. And they aren't. With the equipment that not only we have, but that we've used in the past, that people that are way more advanced into the scientific field than we are, it's not if it is putting off something, which I can't say it absolutely isn't, it's not something measurable with anything that we have right now. Energy, by definition, is, quote, a measurable work unit. That's what energy means. And the key word there is measurable. And
like, how can you not measure it with these, electromagnetic detectors or millimeters, etc.? If there's a spike over here and it stays in the same area, I'm confused on that aspect. But I don't want to, pick it into the wall or whatnot,
Well, no, what I'd say, and that's a big thing because I am trained for electromagnetic field surveys, not for paranormal, but for actual electromagnetic field, like for broadcasts, for example, for radio transmitters, things like that. So before somebody uses a piece of equipment, and I don't care what the equipment is, it can be a camera, it can be an EMF meter, it can be whatever it is, learn to use the equipment and for whatever it was initially designed for. I mean, an EMF meter was not designed to find ghosts. It was designed to find, depending on what kind it is, for example, a tri-field natural meter was designed to detect changes in the Earth's ionosphere. Very minute changes in naturally occurring electromagnetic fields. Just by hand holding one of these things, you are influencing the readings. Other ones can only detect man-made electromagnetic fields, which one would assume that if you're detecting a man-made electromagnetic field, it's not a ghost because we're not making them. But there are reasons to measure for those sort of things. So one of the things that I beg and plead with people that are getting into the field is go get training. Don't buy a piece of equipment and read the instructions that say when this beeps and goes to 3, it's a ghost, because there's never been any conclusive number there that says when an electromagnetic field goes to 8, it's a ghost. Because there's so many variables. There's so many things that change, and we don't take those into consideration normally. Broadcasts are changing all the time. Electromagnetic fields vary all the time. They change in strength, they move. Some don't. If you have a continuous broadcast, if you have, during the day, the sun affects it. Are there any solar flares? Do we have any? There's so many things to take into consideration before we can start measuring for things like that. But I challenge anybody to go to a physicist, go to somebody that studies electromagnetic fields and talk to them about a ley line and try to find one legitimate scientific report that says they're measurable. They aren't. However, the way that people find them generally is through non-scientific methods. Psychics sense them. You can find them with dowsing rods. You can find them with pendulums. These aren't scientific tools. These are often the metaphysical world. And that's kind of, where we've had the problem is we're trying to conclusively come up with an answer for each individual case so we can take it out to the real world, the scientific community, the public, the people that actually aren't involved in this. And there's so many bold things being said in the paranormal right now. And I see a lot of things coming back. One of the reasons that I got into this, I think I told you to begin with, is the photography. Back when I first started getting into this, orbs were the thing. Everybody had orbs. And I actually tracked it back to the guy that coined the term orbs, and he was not good at best. But the thing is, the first time I saw somebody put that out, I'm like, well, now, hold on a minute. I know what that is. And when we say something we being the group collectively, when we say, no, this absolutely isn't what you're claiming it is, we don't say it just because we're jumping to a conclusion about it. We say it because we've tested it. When we come up with, somebody gives us a picture or whatever it is, we don't just go, oh, no, that's not a ghost, that's not this. We take each one individually and study it to try and find out what it is. And, like I say, orbs are a great case because it's one of the few pieces of, quote, paranormal evidence that is absolutely repeatable and testable because it's not a ghost. I mean, there's no other way to put it. But it's coming back. But it's also coming back based on your paranormal belief system. If you're a ghost hunter, it's proof of a ghost. If you're into UFOs, it can be a UFO or some sort of an entity. If you're into other forms of the paranormal, it's being labeled as interdimensional creatures that are sticking probes through and watching us. But it's to each one of those groups, it's absolute proof of whatever they want it to be. And that's when you have to start looking at it with a critical mind and go, okay, it can't be all of these. Could one of these people be right? Possibly, but let's look at it completely neutral and say, okay, what could it be? And that's how we've ruled out not only a lot of things that are being passed off as evidence, but a lot of equipment as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing is, just the knowledge, the understanding, the ability to, and like I say, there's a whole spiritual side to this that if people want to go into it and they think they can talk to ghosts, they can do this sort of thing, great. But that's not something that the scientific community, the general public, things like that, can take as proof. And I'll kind of give you an example of this. This is one that I've done at a lot of talks. If somebody came up with absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt proof of a ghost and had been able to communicate with said spirit, you would be able to prove that either one or possibly none of the world religions were right or wrong. It would be one of the most devastating things that ever happened. World wars would happen because the religious world would be rocked. And in a way, I'm hoping we never do find absolute concrete proof of that, because whoever loses isn't going to be happy. And I still think it's important, and I'm going to keep looking, but it terrifies me to think of the repercussions. Because what if we found out that, hey, some weird little religious sect out there was the only ones that were right? Well, nobody else is going to stand for that.
Yeah. Well, Shar in the chat room was asking, do any of these phone apps work?
That definitely comes back to the science question. First of all, you have to ask, what was the phone designed for in the first place, and what sensors does it have? What can it actually do? Mm-hmm. And then, just like, paranormal entertainment, you have to look and actually read the README files, the instructions if they have them. And all of them say, for entertainment purposes only. Mm-hmm. They're kind of a high-level video game for all practical purposes.
So you guys haven't had any success with any apps? Have you tried any out just to see if there was something to it?
I have every one of them. I have spent more money on those apps. Well, and then you have to ask yourself, when is it real and when isn't it? Mm-hmm. If I buy one that says that it can find ghosts and it pops up every once in a while and says, hey, over in the corner of the room, there's a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
But then I buy one from the same company that says it can find werewolves.
Oh, nice.
So does that mean either A, werewolves are real, and hey, it's a paranormal thing, we're open, but statistically speaking, I'm kind of on the downside of werewolves, but it's being made by the same people. And like I say, just looking into how the devices work. I'll stick with an iPhone because I'm an Apple person. They have like electromagnetic field sensors. You can don't buy an EMF meter. You can just get one on your phone. The phone is a broadcast device. That's its whole purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
Is it broadcasts the phone signal and receives a phone signal, which is an electromagnetic field. It has GPS that's doing the same thing. So by saying it's an electromagnetic field detector is kind of misleading because it's an electromagnetic field creator. So you really have to look at the device for what it's really capable of doing. And I'll step back a little bit and get away from the apps, because the apps, they're fun. I have all of them. It's just, your phone was never intended to be a ghost hunting tool. In fact, what I always tell people is, if you buy something that says that it conclusively finds ghosts, it's a ghost hunting device, there's a problem there.
Yeah.
Because you're buying a device that measures something and records it when we don't know what we're measuring or looking for in the first place.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny. With our team, we have tools, we have our intuition, we have different things that we use. And we have used this app called Ghost Radar Legacy. And another person here in the chat room is talking about how they've used that with great success. But we had an entity come through and say her name was Kate Johnson, Walter Intention Death, Sharp Tool, so on and so forth. And we handed these words over to the museum curator of the Durango and Silverton Railroad Station. And he did his homework. And, before this, they were calling the ghost Emmy, which there is a ghost there named Emmy. She's a little girl. She's not the older ghost. But he came back and said, we did find her. Her name was Kate Johnson. She was a prostitute from Alamosa. She fell in love with a firefighter. They eloped on the train. The brakeman found them together. Fight ensued, and the firefighter was stabbed to death. Kate Johnson ended up taking her life, and due to her beliefs, was stuck in purgatory on this train car, which was called the immigrant car, and it's still chained up, secured in the back of this museum. But due to that, we found that she was Catholic, all this other stuff about her, and this Catholic school class came in and did a prayer of release from purgatory. She was actually gone for like 3 months, but due to free agency, she came back to help the little girl Emmy, because the brakeman is there as well, and he's a bully. He'd always pick on her, not let her talk to us. But we did have success with that. But it's not always on. You just get these random words sometimes, and it's just not always the same. No case or no entity is the same.
Well, and I'd say two things with that. First, I have a comment with that too.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, if you think you have a device that can somehow communicate with the dead, find a place that you would consider to be absolutely not haunted.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Take it there. Use it like you would anywhere else. And see what happens.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, a beacon. If you're out there trying to communicate with something, do you think that something somewhere in the area, whether it's miles away or whatnot, might pick up on that energy and come and try to communicate?
Well, and that kind of goes back to what I said. I've, gone against all of the official ghost hunting rules and said, come on home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got a spot in the museum for you. Just come on over and we'll discuss.
Yeah.
And if that was the case, I would probably have some really angry spirits here. Just because, in a way, I'm almost mocking them, and I haven't had a problem. But I did have a question about that case. You were talking about a cleansing to move them away from purgatory.
It was a Catholic school class of all things, and they came
How
in and
how
said a
long
prayer.
ago was that?
I want to say they came in about 2 years ago, and this ghost has been there for quite some time.
I have heavy questioning about that because back in the mid-1970s, Catholic dogma here, so I'm just running with what the Catholic Church says, purgatory no longer exists. They cut out the purgatory thing, like I say, back in the mid-70s. It's completely out of their canon. The Pope wrote it out. So...
And this new pope is writing all kinds of new things back in, and they're actually going to retranslate the Bible and everything because people have messed with it so much and taken things out and added things in for the will of man.
I wonder what version they're going to use.
Well, I think they're just going to go back to the original text and retranslate it and not add or omit anything.
At this point, there aren't any original texts.
I don't know if I believe that. They have
so many have been cut out. Back in, I'm trying to remember. My brain isn't functioning right now. So many books were cut out because they were considered to be, just, for lesser words, boring.
Yeah, but were they actually cut out, or did they just leave it out of the translation they were doing?
Oh, they were cut out. I mean, there are a series of, quote, lost books from the Bible.
And on another note on that subject, there's new books being found all the time in crypts and such. So it's pretty interesting to see what's happening and what's going to happen.
True,
as far
but
as all that goes.
But at the same time, and I'll go back to one of my original statements there, it all depends on your religion. Mm-hmm. If I go to somebody's house... Exactly. Because if I go to somebody's house and, they're not Catholic... They're fairy tales. They don't mean anything to them.
And it was funny with that case because the museum curator was raised Catholic, and when he heard this prayer, he said the hair on the back of his neck and on his arm stood up, and he said it was so beautiful, but he didn't recognize it. He had never heard it before. And so when they came off, he asked them, what was that prayer that was so beautiful? And they said it was a prayer of release from purgatory. So perhaps it's something new that they've drawn back up. I'm not sure, but it was pretty interesting and pretty cool what had happened after that. But yeah, it's hard to be an expert on anything because everything's changing and there's so many different perspectives or decipherings or whatnot. When you read the Bible, you ask for, the power of deciphering or getting the message that you need out of it, and everybody just gets a different message. There's so many different ways to look at it, but I'm trying to find this question. I think it was from Caden, and he was saying, how do you look at a picture and how do you test a photo, and what's the process look like as far as, orbs or ghosts or whatnot? Do you have any clues on that?
The first thing I would say, and it kind of goes back to one of my other statements of the first thing you need to do when you're analyzing anything, be it a photograph, audio, video, whatever, is to have an education in the field so you understand the basics. Mm-hmm. I completely off of the ghost subject. So many people out there consider themselves to be photographers because they can pick up a camera and take a decent picture. However, do they have a clue of how that picture is actually being taken? Do they know, how the sensors work? Do they actually know what a shutter speed and f-stop are and how they relate to each other?
Yeah, there's so much.
do they understand lighting? Do they understand color theory? All of these different things. And that's just the photography side. This goes with every aspect of tool that we use.
Mm-hmm.
And, with me, when I go to analyze a photograph, the first thing I use is, experience. I hate to date myself, but let's see. The first photographic, that would have been about 38 years ago, 40 years ago, was the first professional photo job I did. So I've got lots of experience just looking at photographs to see what's wrong with them. Because, in the hundreds of thousands of pictures I've taken over the years, yes, there have been a lot of mistakes. So I recognize things like that. Mm-hmm. So just that general knowledge is vital. The ability to critically think about what you're looking at. The ability to understand human nature and our ability to find really nice things in random patterns. The ability of humans to make order out of chaos is amazing. If there's something blotchy in a picture, your mind will automatically try to make that into a face.
Isn't it called something pareidolia or something like that?
Exactly, pareidolia is it. And past that point, I'll ask the people, what were the conditions surrounding when you took the picture? What were what were you doing? How were you doing it? And as I touched on much earlier, especially with digital cameras these days, they give up a lot of information on their own. Depending on the camera, it will put in GPS data, date data, what was the sensitivity of the camera set at? What was the f-stop? What was the shutter speed? Did a flash fire? What metering mode was it in? What focus mode was it in? Did the flash return?
I'm so sorry. We have to go to break right now.
No problem.
But we'll be back right after these messages. You guys don't go anywhere.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm. Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month, where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Tonight's show and topic of discussion do not necessarily reflect the opinion of Spaced Out Radio, SOR Media, or its hosts. Listener discretion is advised. It's hour number 3 of Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa Nicole Thomas. Follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now back to the Rocky Mountains. Here's Tessa.
Hey there, space travelers. Welcome back, and thanks so much for tuning in tonight and hanging out with us in the chat room. Tonight we have Bryan from the Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society, and we left off on pictures, and then we were going on to bigger and better topics. So, Bryan, How are you doing?
Surfing and talking to you. Same as always.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll finish up with the photo thing. The thing is, and this can apply to everything, and I keep saying this over and over again, not just the photography, is one of the best ways to try to come up with an explanation of what something may have been if it was misunderstood is ask yourself, if I was going to have to make this happen in a photograph or make this audio happen, what would it have taken? Can I recreate it myself? Can I fake it myself? And a lot of the times that'll lead you to an explanation of how something may have happened. And it'll kind of it helps your education in being able to understand how equipment works past a basic education, but it still boils down to, before you use any equipment, just go take a class. I mean, all of the people that I work with and myself are certified in so many different tools and fields, and it never stops. Right now, I'm in the middle of 3 classes. We're constantly striving to learn more that'll help us with these fields.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do believe that classes do work, but at the same time, I had a guy living on my couch that had been in college for 8 years, and by this time he should have been a doctor.
Perpetual student is
a doctor,
just a bad excuse.
Not a DM,
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, and it was my 7-year-old daughter who called him out on that, like, well, if you're so smart, why are you living on our couch? And he didn't know what to say to that, but, I do believe in education, and I do believe that it's important, but at the same time, I think practicing something and putting yourself into it in your studies, and you don't have to go to school to be smart. You can educate yourself, and
you can definitely do it on your own.
Yeah, and there's so many people in debt because they're getting an education. They may not ever get out of that hole, but there's so many ways to educate yourself. And
well, and one of the things that I think is interesting, and I'll kind of give you the example there, is with electromagnetic fields is one of my favorite ones.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will grab, let's say, a tri-field natural meter, which I just happen to have sitting in front of me, so I'm using it as an example. And they'll say, the needle, it just went up to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I always ask the question, for what? What is that for? I know it's a number on a dial, but
isn't it like megahertz or something? I'm not sure.
Well,
I don't have one in front of me.
Well, and that's the thing, is people don't understand what it is, but they're using the tool.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to use a tool, at least understand what it's doing.
Exactly,
It's so important. But somewhere I was going to go with this, and I had you write a note, but I remembered because you did that. Yeah, I'm there.
Razor.
One of the things that we get asked a lot, and you've kind of alluded to, is, what do we do that's different? What tools do we use? And I think one of the most important things that's really overlooked in the field at this point is the ability to use critical thinking. And the reason I said that, because we've come up with our own version of this, it's just a lot easier. Are you familiar with Occam's razor?
It sounds familiar, but no,
you can say no.
Tell you. I cannot tell you what it is.
I have to take you back to science class.
I love science.
Basically, it is the scientific statement, and I'm going to shorten it here, that says when you're looking for an answer, all things being equal, the simplest explanation is usually the right one.
Mm-hmm.
And we've dumbed it down a little farther than that. It's just a bar graph going from nothing to a maximum, and we refer to it as the chart of how to not be stupid. And at one end, we have the natural explanation. And at the other end, we have the paranormal explanation. And you have to start weeding out natural explanations. And I'll give you two examples that are kind of fun. But let's say you have a kid that says that Bigfoot's been visiting his window in his bedroom at night. Well, how do you know? Well, I can hear him scratching on the window. It's like, okay, before I jump to Bigfoot, I'm going to go out and I'm going to look at the window and see, is there a tree out there that might be brushing up against it during the wind? Maybe I'll put up some cameras and say, okay, well, first I'll ask, do you have a dog? Maybe he was out there. Then maybe I'll put up some cameras to see if the local wildlife is out there. And you have to start going through all of these possible natural explanations before you can jump to that conclusion. I'm going to use a non-PC term here, but it works. We had an investigation where we absolutely thought that a chair had moved on its own. On video, in an empty room, a chair appears to defy gravity and moves up. And we absolutely, for 2 years, we battled this thing. But we bought dinner for probably 50 people that were just amazingly brilliant minds. I mean, they were as sharp as you can get. We're bringing these guys in, they're going to check it out for us and see if they can come up with a conclusion we haven't. The best one that they had, and this was on the second floor of a building, so it would have taken some work to get there. His answer was a midget had scaled the outside of the building, come in through the window, crawled under the table, lifted the chair, and then gone back out the same way. Because they were the only ones that would have fit. Here's the problem. If you look at a true scientific theory, we know, A, the midgets exist, B, people can climb up and down the side of the building with a ladder, and people like to mess with us. So even though we knew that wasn't the explanation for how this chair had moved, it still was simpler than the answer of it being a ghost, because we know all those other things exist. We have physical proof. I can bring all of this to you and show it to you. So it's really frustrating having to do something in the paranormal scientifically, because there are so many, I hate to use the word unknowns, but it's the only word I can use.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and it is. It's a lot of unknowns. There are no experts in this field. There's no way to have an expert in this field, because there is no way to scientifically prove the paranormal. You have to take it into a sterile environment and prove it repeatedly. There is no way to do that. Even if you built a science lab around a haunted location, it still is not going to happen. But yeah, going past that, Kat in the chat room is asking, what is Bryan's favorite case study that he has done?
I'll get in trouble for this one. And I know everybody will answer the question. So, have you ever heard of the Stanley Hotel?
Yes.
So have I, unfortunately. Long story shorter. Years ago, we were invited to become part of a documentary that was being done about the ghosts at the hotel. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we always use is, before you start looking to see if there's a ghost there why don't you look to see if there's a true story behind that ghost, you know?
Yeah.
If they say that, oh, you know, there's a little boy haunting the top of the building. Well, did a little boy ever die there? Let's start there. Let's not just assume that it's the ghost of a little boy. You know, let's see if there's some real-world answers to it. So, in looking at the hotel, first of all, we found out a lot of the stories had actually been acquired from another location.
Mm-hmm.
However, we found out that this documentary turns out to be based on a theory, and I hate to use the word theory, a concept that had been around for a while, but popped up on Ghost Hunters the first time they were there. That the hotel sits on a large deposit of quartz, limestone, and magnetite, causing, quote, the optimum conditions for ghostly phenomena to happen. So, before we jump to the conclusion of, wow, they got ghosts because of that, I decided, let's look into it. Are those deposits really there? You know, is this based on some sort of truth? So I did a little background research and discovered that the first time that anybody had come up with this was, well, at least the first known case was when Ghost Hunters were up there on their first investigation. And they said, you know, quote, these large deposits are under there, in any place these large deposits are at, we have this type of activity. So that doesn't tell me where this story came from. So I decided I'll just call Jason and ask him. So, and that back then I talked to him all the time. I was on the show once. It's just we were pretty good friends back then.
Yeah,
and I said, so this story up at the hotel, where did you guys come up with it? Because according to the episode, you know, we did a lot of research and came up with this. Well, did a lot of research is actually they went over to the gift shop and asked the guy that was working the front counter. And that's the story they got, was there's a large deposit of these minerals there. And that's, while it's a good way to get a good urban legend, that's not real research. So I wasn't too sure what to do with it at that point, but there was going to be this documentary coming out with us in it, and I was like, I can't leave it sit there. So I tracked around and finally discovered, I thought it was the U.S. Geological Survey that's in charge of stuff like that. Turns out it's the U.S. Department of Agriculture that's in charge of soils in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent an email off to the Department of Agriculture, and I said, guys, I'm just going to be honest with you, because this is going to get weird. I said, there's a room up at the Stanley Hotel, there's these deposits of these minerals said to be there that are causing ghosts to be seen. What can you tell me about the location? And I got an email back from them in just a couple of days that said, we don't know what's under the hotel. There hasn't been a survey within about a 5-mile radius of there ever. And if you know anything about geology, that means they know nothing, because that 5 miles is a huge variance. They said, we do have a geomagnetic satellite survey of the area. And they included it and sent it to me, and they said, but there's no anomalous anything in that area. And at that point, I was kind of happy. I'm like, well, we just don't know what's under it. So, you know, quit telling the story that it's that. You got a ghost story, use it. Don't blame it on the minerals. But as luck would have it, a couple of months later, I got an email back from the Department of Agriculture. And that email had been through, I don't know how many different branches of the government. And the funny thing is, they don't appear to be able to scrape the forwards off of their emails. So it had been everywhere. The title of the email is now called Ghosts in Our Soil. And they asked me, they said, is there any chance that you think that you can get us into the Stanley Hotel to complete a soil survey? So let me see if I can explain this. The U.S. government asked us to get them into the Stanley Hotel. You'd think they could do that on their own.
Well, yeah, they have enough funds and people trained, etc.
Exactly. So, we don't know any better. So we got everything set up for the U.S. government to go in and do a study. We worked with 5 branches of the U.S. government for 2 days doing soil surveys all over the Stanley property and a bunch of adjoining properties, too. We had geomagnetic...
Oh, where did you go? Hold on. What the heck? Where did it go? I don't even understand what happened. I was typing in the chat room and all of a sudden he's gone.
THAL aren't there. They don't exist. So we got to go back to the hotel with a full ghost investigation too. I mean, we gave them a lot of stuff, but we also included this government report showing them, well, you may have a ghost story, you don't have these minerals. So stop running with the ghost stories and just, use your ghost stories. They're great ghost stories, but quit pushing this scientific thing that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just so impossible.
And that's the thing is, we're willing to take it that extra mile. I mean, who else calls in the feds? Another example of that is, are you familiar with Cheeseman Park?
I'm not, but actually we have a caller on the line from area code 622. Who are we talking to?
Hi, Tessa. It's Alyssa.
Hey, Alyssa. How's it going?
It's good. Good.
So did you have a question or a comment?
I actually have a couple of questions for Bryan. My first one, just based on listening thus far and the way that he views things, I wanted to know, to him, pretty much black and white, what he considers hardcore, intelligent, paranormal responses. I guess you could call it proof, but what he thinks intelligent, what would be an intelligent response or proof that it is something paranormal?
Well, I'd say right now, in order to be proof, and I'm using that as a hard term, you would have to have something that you could have multiple people, multiple times, not just somebody from ghost hunting. I could drag in a physicist. I could drag in an electromagnetic engineer. I can take somebody from outside of the paranormal field, bring them in, and have them agree upon mutually agreed upon testing with repeatable results. That's the only way that you can have proof by definition. Like I say, if you do it on a spiritual level, that's a completely different thing. But as far as, proving it to the world, that's the only way you're going to be able to do it.
Okay, so by spiritual, explain what you mean by spiritual. Do you mean like a psychic or a medium, or somebody who
claims a psychic, a medium, somebody that claims that they can speak to the dead without either one of those terminologies, somebody that claims that they have some sort of a method to do said communication that is outside of what would be considered accepted scientific study. I mean, if I have some sort of a device that I claim talks to the dead, before I can prove it talks to the dead, I have to prove what method it uses to talk to the dead. That has to be testable first.
Okay,
and
so
it's very difficult.
In your opinion, what do you believe that there are any devices that can do that can be explained at this moment?
Well, I'll start it off by using my previous one. I'd like to be able to say I hope so, but given the way that we do our investigations, I can't even say I hope so. I just have to say we keep studying, because the minute that I bring a belief into it, it damages the ability to properly conduct an investigation. Anytime that you go into an investigation, and this is something that really kind of offends a lot of people, but if you look at study and investigation in its pure form, you can't go in with a conclusion. If I go to some location to find what's reported as a ghost, that's fine. But the minute I try to start communicating with that ghost, I'm not doing that research anymore, because I've already told myself and everybody else there's a ghost there. So that's not even a question anymore. So it's a really, tricky field to try and do anything with a true scientific method, but somebody has to.
So, in your opinion, if it can't be proved scientifically, then it can't be paranormal?
No, what I'm saying is if it can't be proved scientifically, it falls into the realm of metaphysical or spiritual. And, so far, not saying it won't in the future, but so far, there's been no cross-contamination there. It's all, one or the other. It's like trying to, prove there's a God. You can't do that scientifically. So it's most ghost hunting is based on belief and faith. I mean, it's really difficult, but for those of us that I would love to have proof of, is there an afterlife? Isn't there an afterlife? Is there some sort of a consciousness? Are there extraterrestrials? Whatever it is, I would be the first person to go running to the hills to prove that it was real. But I want to be the one that, if I do have that proof, is absolutely sure that it's proof. So that's why we're so stringent on how we do it.
I don't, in my own opinion, I don't believe there will ever be, there's just, it's like digging and you hit the end of something and over-analyzing it. There's no explanation past a certain point, and you can't scientifically, in my opinion, there's only so much you can do with what has came out as far as equipment-wise and tool-wise. And you can't just keep analyzing it or you'll come up with the same thing. There's no explanation for it. It's just there.
Well, and that's
I don't think you'll ever...
That's why you have to use new techniques. That's why you have to use new theories. Because, I mean, let's look at ghost hunting 100 years ago. They were using bells and strings and flour and things like that, strangely enough, we may use now. But there's a lot more things available to us to be able to look into the electromagnetic spectrum as a whole. I mean, everything from electromagnetic fields to visual areas that are outside of human range, the infrared, the ultraviolet, things like that. That was science fiction to us 50 years ago. So as science advances, as technology advances, as long as we learn to use these tools properly for what they were designed for and apply them towards research like this, I think a continuation of the field is definitely possible. And, we might be able to find something one way or the other. And, we may disprove some things along the way. We may learn a lot along the way. In just the research that we've done, some of the psychological things, we're starting to see a lot of cases of like early onset Alzheimer's has some very, very similar diagnosis to what a lot of people are reporting as visual paranormal sightings. And we've found some relationships between that and what people that we've talked to have and been able to explain things. So as the understanding not only of the technology, but of human psychology and the physiology, the actual biology of how we work, every day we learn more. And it's an amazing thing, and we need to keep moving forward with it. And, I mean, if we don't, think of where we were, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, or even farther back than that. We have made so many advances. We're so much better off for it. There's so many weird superstitions that we don't have these days. There's so many things that we know that at once appeared to be magic that now we know aren't. And it's just like somebody said, go into the rainforest and try and explain a cell phone to some, tribe that's never seen one. It's magic because they can't comprehend it. It would be paranormal to them. To us, it's a phone. So as we strive forward and start making more advances in technology and our understanding of humans, I think we're going to make a lot more advances. But I think that's the only way because, like you said, and I've heard it said many times before, we've been studying the same thing with the same tools and the same techniques for decades, and nobody's getting different results. Well, then we need to change our techniques. We need to use different tools. We need to change our understanding. And
my thing is in my opinion, to me, a lot of the results that are existing now are viable and amazing. And I personally don't think that we will ever be able to convince the entire world of what we believe to be paranormal, no matter how much proof we get.
Right.
Just like I said, it's like digging and hitting a rock. I mean, it's just you can only go so far, and you just have to realize you can't go further.
Right, and I think you kind of said it there. I said it, what you believe, and that's where the line's drawn. With science, if I tell somebody, I think this, and we've been using rocks as an example, so I'll do that. I think that this rock is made out of these chemicals, and it was caused by this happening. I can research and show that and prove it. That's proof. So we need to be able to find a way to say, I have a new idea. This is how we might be able to research. Somebody said they saw a phantom walk through this room one day. And what can we use to actually look at that claim and maybe come up with an explanation as to what it is, paranormal or not paranormal? We need to keep striving at that, or a couple of things are going to happen. As technology moves forward, as science advances, things that fall into that belief category are going to go away. And they're going to go away because people aren't going to accept them. If we want this field to continue, if we want people to try and get, the ultimate answers that we're looking for, we need to be able to keep moving it forward that way. Because if it gets lost as a past belief, I mean, go back into medical science. 500 years ago, we had the four humors and possibly elves living in our stomach that were causing issues. We know that's not true now because science moved forward and helped us with it, but at the same time, we've learned things that are just amazing that would have been considered, paranormal at the time. So the thing is, once you discover how something is or what something is, let's say we discovered that ghosts are real. They aren't paranormal anymore. They're just another thing. And that's really what we're looking for, is to be able to say, if there is an explanation for this, it's not paranormal anymore, because if there's an explanation, it's normal.
So in your opinion, if you can't remove, in your opinion, you can't remove science from paranormal.
You can, but at that point, it's a study of belief. It's a study of faith. Yeah, I mean, it's almost a religious study. Maybe not one specific religion, but unless you can absolutely prove something, and I mean that to the general public, it's a fringe belief, and we need to find out what it is so it isn't a fringe belief, whatever it is, one way or the other.
Okay. Do I have time for one more question, Tessa?
Sure, go ahead.
It's in the same general thing. I wanted to kind of get his opinion on, I spoke about the psychic mediums, and you said people who claim that they can speak with the dead or with spirits. What is your opinion on that, or your opinion on a way to validate and prove that that's what they're capable of?
Well, and that's one of the interesting things, is somebody that claims that they can have some sort of a paranormal ability. That's one that is really testable, because there are, you can set protocols for things like that.
What do you mean set protocol?
I can, for example, set up with mutually agreed upon terms with a person who claims that they can communicate with the dead. So I can set up a double-blind test, and I can say, okay, I have a randomized pool of people here who have loved ones that I want you to contact with, and we need specific information. Inside of that control group, we also have people who do not have a deceased one that they're trying to contact with, and they're faking it. But the psychic doesn't know this. They just give their results as they can. And it depends on what their skills are. They may be somebody that has to hold something. They may be somebody who does remote viewing. They may have some, there's so many variables in there. But if somebody is, and I'm making a quote here from somebody else, if somebody agrees upon mutually testable, under controlled conditions of any paranormal ability, it's testable. And over the past, let me make sure I get you the date right here. Since 1996, things like that have been going on regularly. And not once under those conditions have they passed. That's not to say they don't exist, because if I said they didn't exist, it's likely they don't, but it's not 100%. That we need to test everybody that says that they can do it to see, because how cool would it be to say, we finally found this one person that's a psychic. We finally found this one person that had telekinesis. Whatever the paranormal ability is, but in the over almost 30 years that people have been actively testing it that I know of, nobody's passed. They can't even get past the preliminaries on it. I know I've been on some of the testing teams for these too.
Okay, so in your opinion, it's likely that they don't exist.
Well, like I say, I don't want to be biased. I really don't. I would love for any of these claims to be real. Any of them. And I don't want to give up. That's why I'm still doing this, is in hopes that something out there is real. But at the same time, not convincing myself that it is, just so I'm happy with my results. And that's why I've been through all of this testing with people, because we really do.
Well, thanks so much, Alyssa. It was so great having you call in and, getting your input and thoughts.
Well, I hope you all have a blessed night.
Thanks, Alyssa. You as well. You and Caden have a great night. I'm so glad to hear from you, and I'm excited to have you guys on. You guys have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. So we have a caller here from area code 306. Who are we talking to?
Tessa, my best. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
This is your good buddy Ronald.
Hey, Ronald. How's it going? I didn't think you were going to call in.
Yeah, well, the joke's on you.
That's right. At least I can laugh at myself.
No, that's good. We all have to learn how to do that. That's for sure.
Yeah, indeed.
If you can't do that, you can't live on this planet.
That's right.
That's 100% for sure. Your colleague there on the your guest,
yes,
talking
Bryan.
About the paranormal. Well, like you said, it's very, very difficult to try to even explain it, let alone prove it. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
You could say that, I have a neighbor, my upstairs neighbor. She hates game shows, but I make her watch them once in a while. It's like curtain number 1, 2, or 3, and I'll tell her what the person is gonna guess for the curtain, and I'm gonna tell her what the prize is gonna be, and it's exactly what I said, and that F's her mind up. It's just sometimes just random fluke. I don't consider that like paranormal of sorts. It's just instinct, a personal instinct. We all have some sort of instinct, but we have to learn how to use it, because we live in this commercialized society, and we sort of the word I want to use is we just sort of lose some of ourselves, because we are told what to do and do it this way, and everything will work out, and go get a mortgage and blah blah blah. And that's a sort of a paranormal to me, in the way it's like, well, we can't even be ourselves because we are told not to be ourselves.
Yeah, you must conform.
Yes, there you go. Thank you very much. If
no
like the old song, "We Are the Robots." That's Kraft Punk from way back then. They knew about it. They talked about it. And there are other songs about that too. You know, even there's an Alice Cooper song, The Robots. And everybody's favorite movie, of course, is They Live with Rowdy Roddy Piper. Everybody's favorite movie, for sure. Okay, I'm going to jump out. I love to hear you guys. Tessa, my best.
Oh, thanks,
Take
Ron.
care.
You rock.
Have
I'm
a
so
great
glad you
weekend.
called in. I didn't think you were going to. I was like, you've never called in. I don't think you're going to do it. But I'm so glad you did. It's so good to hear your voice. It makes me feel closer to you.
This is my second call. One time for you and one time for Dave.
Well, I must have missed the one for Dave. But I'm so glad you called in with, with just your thoughts and whatnot. It was good to hear your voice and hear your thoughts on this.
Okay. I appreciate the fact that you liked my crazy on the chat room.
Yeah.
And I hope the other people do. And I hope the other guys do too. I can't mention all their names because there's too many to mention, but they knew who they are. So
yeah.
Cheers
They'll just take
to-
the rest of the
cheers
show.
to
We
all.
don't have. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Bye
But I'm
for
so
now.
glad you called in, Rano. It was good to hear your voice and your input, for sure. And I do appreciate your antics in the chat room. You keep it lively. Well, have a good night, Rano. It was good to hear from you. All right. So, I have some more questions unless... Well, you know what? The main thing that I want to get to, Brian, is the ghost of Colorado. Like, I'm so interested in what you know about that.
Which one?
I don't know. I just know I was looking at the different topics that you guys as Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society, I thought my name was a mouthful, but your guys' is better. But
Yeah, throw that into an email sometime. It's terribly long. Well, kind of where you're going there. Over the years, we've done a ton of public talks. I've lost count. Between that and we did a series of about 6 years worth of haunted tours downtown, and I can say honestly, I've spoken to thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people by this time. And one of the big ones has always been the topic of Colorado's, famous ghost stories. So we've come up with talks based on some of the, more famous locations. The Stanley Hotel, obviously, and we have kind of a fun story there to go with it, but a lot more. The Brown Palace, Cheeseman Park, Grant Humphreys Mansion, Peabody Mansion. I'm trying to think. There's just all of these locations that have these great stories to go with them. Maddie's House of Mirrors. And they're all Denver Central because that's what we've generally dealt with. But I still have talks on other places too. For example, Silver Cliff Cemetery, another big hot spot, supposedly. That we offer talks, it depends. We do a lot of libraries, universities, schools, even things for, business talks. Somebody wants to do team building. We'll go in and do that. And just talk about all of these locations. But what we do is we break down the location and we'll say, okay, here's the real history behind it that you're probably not going to hear anywhere else because, unfortunately, the ghost stories are starting to twist history. Here's the traditional ghost stories that have gone with these and the reasoning behind them, what the facts are. And if it's a place that we've done investigations at or about, we include that in it. So, to get through an hour, we've probably got 5 locations that we'll cover. And we've got probably 30 locations that we we have active information on.
I'm sorry, I had it on mute. But I have seen an orb with the naked eye, but most generally in pictures because they are so fast generally. Or sometimes you'll see this, looks like a static or lightning on your ceiling, and it's like, what is that? It's just energy trying to come through, but how do you know how to generate that energy into something intelligible for us on the other side to understand or perceive? It's crazy and it's interesting and it's like an ever-going mystery, and I just love it. I love looking into it and finding different stories, and you know, sometimes you have people build up stories and then you go and it's nothing. Have you had cases like that where you have all this build up and then you go and there's nothing there?
Well, that's generally when you know that people are making things up, is you'll go on a basic claim. Somebody will say, you know, you need to come to my house and see what's going on because late at night I hear footsteps. So you'll go and it's like, okay, well, I think I may be able to explain this, but, you know, tell me the story. And they're like, well, you may be able to explain that, but how about this? And it keeps escalating to the point where you know, you're an hour into it and they're explaining how heads were spinning and walls were bleeding. And the answer to that is, if something as extreme as they've moved to was actually happening, that would have been the first thing they mentioned. You know, you don't go to the mechanic and say, well, I need you to change the air filter. And then as they're doing it, go, oh yeah, by the way, the engine needs replaced. You start with the big stuff. And that's one of the ways we've been able to filter out people that are making things up, because they make it up on the fly. Now, they usually make it up. There's one group of people, and I don't know if you've dealt with this type or not, but we've had a ton that tend to call anybody that will respond to their house because, honestly, they need a friend to talk to. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with the paranormal. These are the people that if you contact the local police and fire departments and talk to them, they'll say, oh yeah, we're at their house once a week. There's nothing going on.
They get calls all the time, and loneliness is a big issue, and it is really sad because they do have family out there, but everybody has their own thing that they're doing. But to take that time for someone in your family that is alone, like you don't have a wife anymore and your kids are all grown and everybody's gone doing their own thing, like who's supposed to be there for them? So they'll reach out to the police department or the fire department or, you know, a paranormal line or whatnot. It's pretty interesting, yet it's really sad and disheartening.
You know, unfortunately, for cases like that, anybody doing paranormal research will pretty much jump on anything because you have to. So you find yourself at places like that. And I've always been concerned. I mean, yes, we know there's cases of, you know, ghost hunters that are out there damaging locations. They're breaking into places, things like that. My concern, and I haven't heard of it yet, is we are blindly walking into people's houses without knowing anything about them. that is one of the most dangerous things you could possibly do. I know I had a member a few years ago, when she went on her first interview at a house, she was terrified. She's like, I'm not really afraid of the ghost aspect of this, but how do we know the persons that we're going to their house isn't a serial killer?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, good point. I guess we just have to trust them. And, even worse than that, we're going to go spend the night with them. Or maybe a couple of nights with them. And, people are weird. Who knows what you're going to end up with? So, I think especially for a lot of, people newer into the paranormal world, not knowing how to look for, the occasional psych case that may come through, that I'm happy, but I'm astonished that there haven't been more problems.
Well, it is amazing, and we are on our last minute of the show. Is there any last tidbits you'd like to share with our listeners?
Come on over to RockyMountainParanormal.com, check it out. And I've got a new podcast that's about to start in, about a month or so. It'll be linked off the site, so just come on over and check it out. And all of our investigations are available as downloadable PDFs, so lots of fun history and ghost stories, so lots of fun to be had.
That's cool. Are you guys on YouTube or anything like that?
There's a link off of our website for that, too.
Nice. Yeah, I just got, the homepage and everything. There's so much to take in, and so I didn't even get that far, but I definitely will because I'm interested, and I don't think we touched on as many things as I wanted to, as I still have, 2 pages of questions here for you, but I'm going to start my closing audio right now. And I just wanted to say, it was so great to have you on tonight, Bryan. I'm so glad you can make it, and I really love what you're doing as far as trying to get the scientific side of the paranormal world. It's really difficult, and I applaud you on that.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle, but hey, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, it's an ugly job, but somebody's got to do it.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm so grateful to your team as well.
No
but
problem.
Thank you again for being on.
Thanks. Cool. Well, talk to you next time.
All right, you have a good night. And thank you everyone in Spaced Out Radio, Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, Deep Talk Radio, and wherever else in the universe you are listening tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening. It was so interesting to pick this subject apart. The paranormal is so diverse and deceptive, and it's hard to really pin it down, but it was my pleasure, literally and figuratively. And I can't wait to do it again tomorrow on Spaced Out Radio Psychic Sundays on spacedoutradio.com. I'm so grateful for all you guys that called in and put your messages in the chat room. You guys are awesome. I love hanging out with you guys and getting your input and your knowledge. This is an awesome, awesome way to educate ourselves. So you guys, don't forget, we are all in this together. Together, we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we own the night. Until next time, nighty-night, love and light to all my space cases out there. You guys have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. Actually, it's Sunday morning. I will see you guys all back here tomorrow night. You guys make sure you take care of yourselves. Drink lots of water if you've been drinking tonight, and make sure you get some food in your bellies. That's the best way to take care of yourself. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We have Psychic Tasha in. She's amazing, and she's going to talk about so many things in the paranormal realm and the spiritual realm, as well as releasing your inner sexual beast. If you're a woman in your 40s or over, they have a site for that as well, where the women and the men can partake. So make sure you tune in tomorrow for the gorgeous, beautiful, and lovely Tasha. It's going to be a great show. I can't wait to do it with you guys and get your guys' free readings. Sunday night, free readings. You guys have a good night.